Hi Year 6, it's Mrs. Withers here with Chapter 8 of Orphans of the Tide. The Cathedral of St. Celestina. Ellie stumbled groggily from her bedroom the next morning. She rubbed her eyes and the workshop settled into view. Sunlight streaming down from the window. Dust motes drifting in the beams. There was no sound from the basement where she'd cleared Seth a space to sleep. Providing him with an old mattress and a pillow she'd improvised from a bundle of rolled-up jumpers stuffed inside a potato sack. Ellie looked around, hoping Finn hadn't crept in during the night, but there was no sign of him. She was about to climb to the roof to water her plants when there was a knock at the door. She undid the bolts and pulled the door open an inch, afraid the guards might still be outside. But it was just Anna, dressed in her usual blue jumper, black shirt and mismatched socks. She was making whooshing sounds, swinging her head back and forth like she was wielding a sword. She looked Ellie up and down. "You're still in your nightdress." Ellie cleared her throat. "Oh, I had a lie-in." "You never lie in." "I didn't sleep well, because they nearly burned Seth alive." Anna continued making her swooshing sounds. "You're still bothered about that," she said. "So what are we up to today?" "Well, if you don't mind, I wondered if you could run me some, errands?" Ellie said distractedly. Anna raised an eyebrow, then fished an apple from her pocket. "For what?" "Well, for some, Ellie glanced around the floor for inspiration. "Screwdriver tips. And, apple cogs." "Okay," said Anna. "Really?" "Yeah." Anna took a huge bite of her apple. "And then you can tell me where you're keeping Seth." "What?" said Ellie. "Well, you're blocking the door, so I can't come in, and you're acting even weirder than usual." "I'm tired, that's all," said Ellie. Anna peered over Ellie's shoulder. She was taller than Ellie and barely had to stand on tiptoe. "Why is there blood on the floor?" she said. Ellie turned in surprise. Anna used that moment to nip under her arm. "It's everywhere!" she cried, following the trail past the book pile, where she found the scrap of metal Seth had cut his foot on. "Anna, don't!" said Ellie, as Anna dropped to the floor and tried to inspect the soles of Ellie's feet. "Get off!" "You didn't cut yourself," said Anna. "It's paint." Anna scowled at her. "You think I can't tell the difference between blood and paint?" She rushed across the workshop, vaulting a pile of books. She looked at Ellie's bedroom door and then back at Ellie. "Don't go in there," said Ellie sternly. Anna shrank away from the door. She knew better than to try Ellie's patience, where her bedroom was concerned. "Is he in there?" said Anna. "Who?" Anna rolled her eyes. "Seth." "No." "But he is here." "No!" But without meaning to, Ellie's gaze flickered to the basement door, and it was all Anna needed. "No, Anna, don't go down there!" But Anna rushed over, pausing only to frown at the floor. "Why is there a puddle?" she said, wrinkling her nose. Carefully, she stepped over it and put her head inside the door. "Anna, listen," Ellie spluttered. "You can't—" "So where is he then?" said Anna, reappearing. Ellie stared at her in shock, then peered down the stairs into the cramped basement. The mattress was empty. "But where's he gone?" said Ellie in a tiny voice. "So he was here," said Anna. But Ellie was already racing back into the workshop, checking under tables and behind bookcases. "But you said it wasn't you that rescued him." "You lied to me." "I didn't rescue him. He just showed up here last night and I let him sleep in the basement. He tricked me," she cried. "I can't believe it, that little monster." "He probably hypnotised you or something," said Anna thoughtfully. "I bet the vessel can do that." "He's not the vessel," Ellie snapped. "Ugh, I'm such an idiot. Last night he said he was going to try and find the real vessel. I bet that's what he's done." Anna rubbed her hands on her skirt to get rid of the apple juice. "Well, I guess that's it then. No more Seth. Have you had breakfast?" No, we have to find him, especially now I've interfered. What if he tells Hargraf that we helped him? We? Said Anna, appalled. I haven't done anything. Exactly. You're not turning me into the Inquisition right now. That makes you an accomplice. I told you not to get involved in the first place, Anna said, crossing her arms. Ellie grabbed a tin of whale oil from the shelves and poured some of it into a lamp. Anna screwed up her face. It's daytime. We don't need a light. Shh, said Ellie. I took some precautions before bed, in case Seth did decide to run off. She carried the lamp to the workbench, where she cleared aside a saw, a paint-splattered shirt and a sheep's skull, until she found what she needed, a curved piece of violet-stained glass. She placed the glass over the oil lamp, then lit the lamp with a match so it emitted a faint purple-blue light. Anna watched her, perplexed. Pretty clever, isn't it? Said Ellie. I have no idea what you're doing. I'll show you. I have this special tincture. I think my mum invented it, or found it, on one of the hunting islands. I think it's called... Just tell me what it does, Anna groaned. It glows, but only under the right colour of light. I left a puddle of it outside the basement door last night, in case Seth decided to escape. I knew he wouldn't try the front door, because of the guards. But Ellie ran over to the basement door. She shone the lamp down, and the puddle of pale violet liquid appeared on the floor. Anna frowned. So? Ellie bit her lip in anticipation and raised the lamp higher. There, on the floorboards, were more blotches of pale violet. Crossing the workshop, then climbing the ladder to the window, alternating from left to right on each rung. Footsteps, Ellie explained delightedly, bouncing on the balls of her feet. And they'll lead us straight to Seth. Ellie thrust the lamp into Anna's arms, then pulled on a jumper and trousers over her nightdress, grabbing her coat and yanking on a pair of boots. They clambered up to the rooftop. It's too bright here, said Anna, pointing the lamp down towards the slates, searching for more violet splotches. Hold on, said Ellie, taking off her coat and using it to give them some shade. Purple footprints dotted across the rooftop, right to the edge. Ellie and Anna peered down into the street. He jumped down, said Anna. Maybe he fell, she added, hopefully. He's actually quite athletic for a boy who lived inside a whale, said Ellie. Come on. They picked up the trail of violet splotches in the street behind the workshop. The marks led them downhill along several alleyways. He's heading for the sea, said Ellie, furrowing her brow. Why? Maybe he's looking for a whale to climb back into, said Anna. As they followed the trail, the salty tang of the sea grew stronger, along with the reek of old seaweed. Round one corner they found an old man praying frantically. O saints, grant us the wisdom to find the vessel. O saints, give us the strength to defeat the enemy. He stopped at the sight of Ellie and Anna, watching them suspiciously as they hobbled by, bent double beneath Ellie's coat. In the next alleyway, a young girl was crying. Don't worry, her father said, hugging her close. The Inquisitors will find him. They'll find him. They'll kill him. You promise, said the girl tearfully. Down another alleyway, an Inquisitor was knocking on someone's door. A terrified young man answered, swallowed, then led the Inquisitor into his home. His neighbours watched from the windows above, gossiping darkly to each other. Occasionally, Seth's trail swerved sharply into an alcove or behind a stack of fishy-smelling crates. Ellie pictured him ducking out of sight as people passed by. At least that meant he was being careful, she thought. The footprints led them into an open market where people were hurrying briskly about their morning shop. Overhead, the ruined clock tower of St. Angelo's poked above the rooftops. The tower had been smashed open from inside by the enemy 23 years before, the last time it had manifested. Ellie noticed that people were lowering their gaze as they went by, to avoid looking at the broken clock face. Further down they passed a grey, gargoyle-covered building with boarded-up windows and a spike-crowned roof. Ellie had always thought it was abandoned, but now there was an ornate silver lock on its front door, which seemed wasted on an otherwise mouldy ruin. As they approached, the doors crashed open, and Ellie pulled Anna aside as Hargraff stormed out, 4 inquisitors scuttling in his wake. City folk hurriedly darted from his path, but one old woman yelled at him from a side street. "You failed us!" she cried. "You were supposed to keep us safe! You failed us!" Hargraff turned his head slowly, staring at the woman with cold, dead eyes. He began to march steadily towards her, and she turned and hurried into the alley. When he was gone, Ellie and Anna crossed the street and picked up Seth's trail again. The violet splotches were getting fainter, but they were still able to follow them along the cobbled road, down to where the great docks spilled out from the side of the city. The docks were nearly so old as the city they'd grown from. When the city had been built long ago, the sea had been miles below. Now hundreds of ships were moored to a collection of submerged towers and hollowed-out mansions. The city's largest ship, the Righteous Archangel, was anchored within the ruins of a massive church. Smaller ships huddled around the outsides of the buildings, or else were moored along the strips of floating platforms that branched out to sea. Masts and rigging rose up all around Ellie and Anna, and soon they were surrounded by the shouts of sailors and the creaking of elaborately decorated ships. The whale lords loved to outdo one another, and each ship had been ornamented in some way, with gold leaf or murals or carvings of ferocious sea creatures. Ellie and Anna stepped uncertainly onto the wooden platforms that bobbed up and down with each movement of the waves. They slowed their pace, unsteadied by the motion skirting the occasional gaps where the boards had rotted through. "Careful you don't slip," Ellie warned. Anna rolled her eyes. "I can look after myself, Ellie. I come down here all the time without you." There were sailors everywhere, their songs and their laughter ringing across the docks. They bound easily from platform to platform, their soaking boots drenching the wood with salt water and washing away any chance Ellie had of picking up Seth's trail. "This is no good," she said. "How are we going to find him now?" They paused beside a robust ship that tied up against the dock. Sailors winced a long, heavy-looking bundle down from the deck. It was the length of 3 men, and as thick as a rowing boat, wrapped in a great swath of canvas that tapered at one end. Ellie and Anna stared at it curiously. Castian leapt from the rigging, his long red coat fluttering behind him like a cape. He began working his way down the canvas, stripping it aside in rough, sudden movements. A fin could be seen first, then a streak of charcoal grey, and a dead black eye. He flung the canvas to the ground, revealing the colossal body of a great white shark. Anna gasped. "Whoa, it's huge," she said. The shark lay slumped on one side, its thick snarling gums curled around rows of pointed teeth. There was a deep gouge in its side. His sailors all cheered, though Castian himself looked grim and distracted. As his men gathered around to shout his name, he cut them short with a chopping motion of his hand. "There's nothing to be happy about today," he told them, pulling the knife from his belt and kneeling down at the side of the shark. "The enemy walks among us." Ellie grabbed Anna by the arm and pulled her away before Castian could notice them. They wandered round, scanning the docks for any sign of a slinking shadow. "Look!" said Anna excitedly. Ellie's heart leapt into her throat. "What?" "Those sailors over there are so handsome." "Oh, for goodness sake, Anna," Ellie groaned. "There are more important things to worry about." Anna sighed, mournfully watching the sailors. "I should have brought some flowers to give them." Ellie dragged Anna back to the dry land. She had almost given up hope of re-finding Seth's trail when she spotted a tiny smudge of purple on the stones by her feet. "I found them!" Ellie cried. The trail led them out of the great docks and along a narrow alley, before depositing them in the shadow of an immense, lopsided cathedral that had half crumbled into the sea. Ellie felt a cold thrill of nerves in her chest. "What has he gone in there for?" she said. "It doesn't matter. We can't follow him," said Anna. "It's not safe." "It's perfectly safe. It's not like the enemy's still in there. It's probably been an impressive, awe-inspiring building once, but history has treated it poorly. Great gouges had been torn from its sides, and its roof was pock-marked with soot-ringed holes, as if geysers of fire had erupted from there. A wooden notice stood by the dismal archway that served as its entrance. "This is the hallowed site upon which Saint Celestina and the Holy Inquisition defeated the first manifestation of the Great Army. The god who drowned the gods. No entry except on Inquisition business." Ellie knew the sign was inaccurate. Her mother had told her as much. There had been no Inquisition back then, just a gang of desperate survivors fleeing the enemy's destruction, and Celestina hadn't been a saint yet, but a fearless woman with a fishing spear and perfect aim. Ellie told all this to Anna, and Anna let out a yawn. "Stop showing off!" Ellie crept inside, warily eyeing her surroundings. The cathedral of St. Celestina looked just as it must have done at the time of the first battle, 700 years before. Thick pillars rose to the rooftop, though 2 had fallen and now lay scattered in segments. The building sloped down, and the sea had spilled through the holes in the wall, drowning half the floor. A towering stained glass window poked out of the water. "Ellie, I'm telling you, we shouldn't be in here," said Anna. "Like you've never been in here before?" said Ellie, pointing to a grey stone wall, where the words "Anna was here" was written in dark red chalk. "That could have been any Anna. It's a very common name, you know. If you're frightened, you can stand by the entrance and check no one's coming." But Anna just scowled. They crept onwards, following the line of fading purple marks that led down to the water. They couldn't see Seth anywhere. They passed a cluster of tall statues of robed men and women, 3 of which had been smashed aside, resting against the far wall of the cathedral in many pieces, leaving just the legs and feet behind. 4 times Ellie and Anna passed the strange shadow of a figure on the walls, like a large charcoal drawing, spread up the stone with its arms flung wide. Elsewhere they saw deep scratches in the stone, as if human fingernails had raked through the rock like it were butter. Ellie found it hard to conceive that the enemy had actually stood in this place, not in its vessel, but in its actual physical form, destroying both the cathedral and the people who'd fought against it, until at last a fishing spear was hurled straight at its head. She shivered. Anna was standing very close to her, her hand hovering by the sleeve of Ellie's coat. Ellie inspected the floor. The splotches were barely visible now, just tiny flecks of purple, no bigger than a raindrop. She followed them round a pillar that had survived the enemy's attack. The purple dots vanished into the water. "He's gone into the sea," Ellie said, astonished. "No," said Anna in a hollow voice. "He's up there." Ellie looked up, then took a step back. Seth was 15 feet above them, perched on top of a disfigured church organ that rose straight out of the sea. A tangled mess of brass pipes topped with gold angels. He was crouched among the angels like a cat preparing to pounce, glaring at the sea beneath him. "What is he doing?" Ellie whispered, as she and Anna watched from over the fallen pillar. She wasn't sure why she was whispering exactly, only it felt somehow that they had intruded on something private. The cathedral was silent save for the quiet lapping of the sea against the stone. That became a quiet rumble. Then a much louder one. The sea began to bubble, almost as if it were boiling. Anna clutched Ellie's arm. Seth was staring at the sea with such intensity, his knuckles pale as they gripped the organ pipes. Tentatively, he raised one hand. The sea rippled and began to rise, a column of water breaking from the surface. Seth's fingers trembled, his eyes wide. Ellie gasped. Seth was drawing the water towards him until it nearly touched his hand. How? Ellie whispered. How is he doing that? What do you want from me? Seth yelled suddenly. Get out of my head! He was shaking with fury, a vein throbbing in his brow. The sea thrashed, then rose up all at once in a huge wave, crashing down against the church organ. Ellie leapt forward to help. Only when the sea was washed away, Seth was nowhere to be seen. Seth! Ellie cried, rushing to the water's edge. Did you see that? Said Anna. He is the vessel. But it had seemed to Ellie more like the sea had attacked Seth, like an unruly dog biting its master. Help me find him, she yelled. She dug in her coat pockets for the pair of special glasses she'd made for seeing underwater, slammed them on her face, and then flung off her coat. She jumped into the water. Seth was lying below the surface. He was unconscious, draped across the rubble of the shattered cathedral floor. Something was moving on his skin. For a moment, Ellie thought it was the shadow from the dappling sunlight breaking through the roof. Then she realised it was inside him. Dark blue shapes swirling up and down his bare arms and on his chest, where his shirt had ripped open. Ellie put an arm around Seth's neck and another around his back, pushing off towards the surface. Thanks for helping, Ellie said to Anna, dragging Seth onto the dry stone. He's dangerous, said Anna, staring in horror at the blue swirls on Seth's skin. I don't think you should touch him. He's not dangerous, said Ellie. As she spoke, Seth came to life, gasping for air and smacking Ellie in the face with a flailing hand. Ow! She staggered backwards while Seth rolled onto his front and coughed up water. Are you all right? Said Ellie, rubbing her cheek. I was trying to get it to be quiet, he said. He's completely lost it, said Anna. What do you mean? Ellie asked him. What were you doing? Shut up! Seth roared again, glaring at the sea, as if it had just tried to insult him. The water rumbled in response. Shh, Anna warned, glancing nervously up at the entrance. If they find us here... Seth, you need to keep your voice down, said Ellie. Me? Seth raged. I'm not the one making all that noise. The water thrashed and spat again. You're the only one making the noise, said Anna. Seth, it's all right, said Ellie, crouching down beside him. We're here. Maybe you should take some deep breaths, she added, eyeing the unsettled water, worried it might lash out again. Seth glared at his hands and then took 3 long gulps of air. As he did, the water began to still, then was calm. A tiny crab scuttled from the shallows. Why did you come here? Ellie asked. Seth screwed his eyes shut, like he was trying to banish a headache. I had to know what was making all that noise, and I couldn't do it out there, where everyone wants me dead. He waved his hand around vaguely. Ellie paused, trying to find the right way of phrasing her next question. Whatever word she chose sounded too bizarre. She looked at Anna, and then back at Seth. Seth, did you just move the sea? I told you, I was trying to get it to be quiet, he yelled, as if yelling at the sea was a normal thing to do. Again, the sea rumbled. Anna backed away, motioning for Ellie to do the same. We have to turn him in, she said. He's the vessel. He'll kill us. He's not the vessel, said Ellie. Then how come he made the water bubble up like that? And even if he was, which he isn't, then if we turned him in, he'd probably throw us in prison for trying to help him in the first place. I didn't try to help him, Anna grumbled. So you want me to get locked up? Anna scuffed one foot violently against the stone floor. No, she said quietly. Seth stared at the sea. He took a threatening step towards it, and Ellie grabbed his wrist. Stop it, she said. Don't you see? Somehow, when you get angry, and the sea gets angry too. A sudden frustration flared up in her chest as she remembered what it had cost her to rescue him in the first place. I can't believe you. You left the workshop even after I told you how dangerous it was. You really are stupid. Don't call me stupid, Seth growled behind him. The sea growled too. We're not taking him back, said Anna firmly. I don't want him anywhere near the orphans. We have to, said Ellie. He's not safe here. Anna stared at Ellie in disgust. You want to study him, don't you? Like he's an experiment, isn't he? Like one of your dead rats. I'm not a rat, said Seth, rounding on Anna. Who are you, anyway? Anna clenched her fists. The person who's going to turn you into the Inquisitors if you're not careful. Seth took a step forward, and Anna squared up to him, her face inches from his. Ellie squeezed in between them. Again, the seawater rumbled. Go stand over there, Ellie told Seth, to her surprise. He obeyed, slumping down next to one of the statues and closing his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. It's not safe, Ellie, Anna whispered, squeezing Ellie's arms. He's not the vessel, Ellie said wearily. I can prove it to you. Then what is he? Ellie looked at Seth. His eyes closed, but his brow furrowing every time a wave washed in, relaxing when it went out again. Something else. Okay, Year 6, that's the end of the chapter. But once again, we have got another diary entry from this Claude Hestermeyer. Peter's father got the money he needed. It just appeared in his sitting room that very day, though his doors and windows were all locked. At first, I was delighted. The moneylenders would leave him alone now. The next morning, though, I wandered into the dining hall and saw the master and the treasurer of the university sitting together, looking worried and confused. Apparently, some gold had vanished from the university vaults. It wasn't a huge sum, but its disappearance was a concern for my fellow scholars, and for me. You took the money from us, I raged, marching up and down my office. The enemy was sitting comfortably in Peter's armchair. He smiled an ugly smile, while I shouted at him, one that I couldn't remember ever seeing on my old friend's face. It had come from somewhere. Claude, he said. Be glad I didn't take it from the orphanage. I slept that night on the floor of my office, too tired to go home. After I asked the enemy to get the money, I found myself suddenly exhausted, in body and mind. When I awoke, I could barely rise from the floor, and when I finally did stand, I felt like my brittle legs would snap. I stumbled over to the mirror and saw that I was paler and thinner. Is this something to do with you? I asked the enemy, who was still sitting in the armchair. He looked sleek and relaxed, and as if he'd enjoyed dinner and a perfect night's sleep. He shrugged. You asked me for my help, he said. That's the side effect. It's you, isn't it? I said accusingly. You're sapping my energy. I've made you stronger. I scowled and went to brush my hair, but when I did, several brown strands came away in the brush. What's happening to me? I groaned, sitting down at my desk. I should never have asked you to get that money. The enemy looked at me for a long time, saying nothing. I felt he was looking right into my soul. Finally, he leaned forward. No, he said. You really shouldn't. Okay, Year 6, I'm going to leave it there for today. That's the end of chapter 8. So, in that chapter, basically, the girls, Ellie and Anna, have found Seth again. And they've discovered some of his powers. Seems like he's definitely got a strong connection with the sea. And they've described the sea as like a dog that he is controlling, and that he is the master of. We've also, in that diary entry at the end of Claude Hestermeyer, learnt a little bit more about how the enemy works, and it seems that the enemy is growing stronger and sapping Claude Hestermeyer's energy or life from him. All right, we're going to leave it then for today. Mr. Mans will be back tomorrow with chapter 9.